Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Writing History Podcast. Today, another fantastic show planned for you guys. Let's be honest, I am never going to plan a crappy show for you. Every show is going to be absolutely amazing. And this one certainly lives up to that billing. As always, I've got my good friend Mr. Chitwood here. Say hey, Chitwood.
What's going on, everybody?
And we've got two very special guests, two people that I absolutely adore. We have the Waz.
What up, guys?
And we have a very special guest on as well, my very own student teacher, Mr. Warwick.
How's everybody doing today?
So today we're going to be talking about being new teachers. We're going to talk some science stuff, which is super scary because when I was in high school, it was the one class I got a C in, so we'll see how I can carry on this conversation. And then we got some other things going on, but before we get into the heavy-hitting stuff, let's talk about something that I truly love, and that is music. So, I'm sure we've got some downtime right now. I'm sure you guys have got some music you've been listening to, something that's really got your ear. So, Waz, let's hear what you got going on.
So for me, when I listen to music, and my students know I listen to music all day, every day, it's very action-based. So when I want to work, I listen to a lot of piano music, honestly. But because I have been working a lot, I've been doing a lot of video games, which I rarely have been doing in the past. I've been listening to a lot of like heavy metal, death metal stuff, Dio, Ozzy Osbourne, a little bit of Atreyu, Avenging Sevenfold, things like that.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Waz, did you hear that Metallica is going to start live streaming their shows starting Monday?
Oh, perfect. That's perfect,
Yeah,
because then I'll have that on
from
on one screen while I wreck in video games on the other screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Mr. Warwick, what are you listening to?
So I've got slightly eclectic taste in music. Part of it, I listen to a lot of Christian music, but the eclectic part comes in where I've been listening to some choral music and choir stuff, and so the eclectic part is I'm into people with really, really low voices.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever heard the term basso profundo or contrabass, that's what it is, and so they're featured on a lot of these pieces. And there's one particular song that I've kind of gotten hooked on. So that's been a thing lately as well.
Okay, cool. And what song is that you're hooked on?
It's called A Venetian Night. It was written by a guy named Mikhail Glinka in the 1820s, 1830s, and it was a performance done in 1980.
Oh, cool. Sweet. Mr. Chitwood, what you got going on?
Not really too much of anything. What I've been doing a lot to pass the time by is grade. When I'm not really a music person when I'm trying to grade, but for some reason I just listen to movies that I already know. So, I mean, I've been listening technically to a lot of Star Wars movies while I've been grading this downtime, but...
well, Star Wars has a lot of good music, too, though. So, you can't really miss with that.
True. That is true. If I had to actually get down to music, though, I have people pleaser in the classroom in terms of trying to pay homage to various types of genres. But in my own downtime, what I'm listening to is primarily country music. And Kenny Rogers actually just died the other day, so I've listened to a little bit of Kenny Rogers, but really it's country music is what I listen to in my downtime, so that's where I've been.
All right. Any particular favorite country artists?
Nothing in particular right now. Nobody's really standing out. I do love Chris Stapleton, so there's always something that I'm hearing from him from my playlist. But really, I'm a pretty pretty go with the flow person. I like to hear new music, so if something pops up and I don't know it, I'll listen to it. I won't change it. So,
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Sweet. Well, I'm a little bit of a country fan as well. Really, a lot more in my younger years. But one of my very first ever favorite bands was a band called Alabama, and they're considered one of the greatest country groups of all time. So they're pretty awesome. They started to get famous in the late 70s, early 80s, and continued their popularity through the 90s. So they're fun. They're a good listen. But what I've been listening to is actually one of my favorite songs ever, and it's by a band called Five Iron Frenzy, and the song is called, Get Your Riot Gear. It's a fantastic song.
I'm writing this down. Five Iron Frenzy.
Yeah.
Is that one of those Christian ska bands?
It is. It is. So this song, though, is all about social injustice. So Five Iron Frenzy is kind of an interesting group. They were considered kind of a Christian ska band, except two of the members are agnostic. One's an atheist, and that leaves like two others that are Christian. But they sing, some Christian-y stuff, but they also sing a lot about social issues. And Get Your Riot Gear is about some social issues. So it's a really, really cool song. It sounds a lot happier than it is when you listen to the words. It's absolutely wild, but the song is it's just a pretty song. So check it out. It's kind of fun.
Already downloaded onto the iPhone.
I was going to say Spotify's going to get to work later on that.
Fantastic. All right, well let's talk some stuff. And so one of the things that I thought would be fun to talk about today, since my co-hosts today are so young and I'm so old now, as Miss Rocky pointed out.
It, Mr. Lynn.
No, Miss Rocky has said that I am not a young teacher anymore. That means I'm old. And if Miss Rocky says it, it's the truth.
It's probably just the beard. Let's be honest.
I mean,
please.
Rocky,
I am almost 40. That means I'm not young anymore. So, anyways, what's it like being a new teacher? So, this is a podcast for our students. And I think it's really cool that the students get some insight into our minds and into our psyche. And so, for being a new teacher, what's it like? It's been a long time since I was a new teacher, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. But let's hear from the guys who are in the middle of it. So really, Warwick and Waz, we're turning it over to you. And Chitwood's still pretty young too, so you can definitely chime in as well. And I'll definitely commiserate. So whoever wants to go, take it away.
I'm actually, for the record, I'm actually a little older than Waz and Chitwood, so I'm kind of in the middle age group.
Yes, but when it comes to teaching experience, you're still a baby.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, Warwick. I think Mr. Warwick, I'm going to let you go first because your experience I can comment on and relate to, but then I have that extra little literally just 1 year extra. That's the only difference between us. So. Take it away. What's it like being a student teacher right now? I know my student teaching year was awful, and it was a rough experience. And this situation where it makes it worse for you, I know. So, what's it like, being out of school teaching, but also being out of school at the academic university level?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, mixed feelings. Because at first, what I envisioned was because we were supposed to go. We were supposed to have an extended break after April 3rd. And so what I envisioned was, okay, I got all this extra time. I can really plan these lessons and really get them down pat and then come back really strong in the classroom, fully confident in everything, rather than planning, the night before and it just barely getting it together. But now that it's looking like, it's not so certain that if we will go back to school or not. It's already been extended to April 20th. So, it's a little disappointing. I mean, I feel like I could definitely use the experience, the extra, last month and a half of school for that extra experience. and was looking forward to finishing out things with the students in the traditional way. And of course, and this will probably come up. And I see Chitwood and I think they posted something on Facebook last night about this. But I mean, there's a good chance the seniors won't get a traditional graduation ceremony, and that's pretty crushing. I mean, I would yeah.
That applies to you too. I mean, I feel so bad for my students. I was lucky enough to go to graduation last year and see my first batch of students off. But for you too, when I graduated from the credential program at Sac State, I felt more meaning and more value in that graduation than when I actually got my bachelor's degree. And so if I was still doing my student teaching year this year, I would be I'm so, woo. And what you said about the experience, I learned so much from my master teacher, Mr. Smith. Dude, shout out, dude. I would not be the teacher I am today without him, and I might not have survived the program. But
yeah, and I agree. I think there's a couple things that you said in there. One was talking about how last year you went through the first batch of kids that got to walk across that stage. I think for us as a teacher of students in the past or our current students that are graduating, being able to see that sense of accomplishment that they feel themselves rather than you feeling for them by assigning them a grade on a certain test or seeing that they finished with a B or an A when they worked really hard all throughout the year. I don't think there's really a feeling you can attest to that other than seeing those same kids that have worked this hard to walk across that stage. To see their faces light up and to go shake the hand, grab their diploma.
Be able
their moment of glory.
Be able to celebrate with them in person.
For us as teachers, but it's even bigger of a deal for the students.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was really looking forward to this year's graduation and whatever plan we have in the future in terms of hopefully we get to come back in time to be able to hold something like that. Mm-hmm. But this is my first year of actually being able to watch my kids that I've taught walk across the stage, because I've both taught sophomores and juniors for the past 3 years. So this would have been my first group of kids that actually had walked across the stage. So for me, with this class, the class of 2020, I do feel that kind of emotional attachment on a different level, because they were my first year teaching, my first batch of kids that would be going through this process. And to be honest, it does not, the fact that say that there was not going to be a graduation, hypothetically, it wouldn't necessarily diminish the sense of feeling that I have and how proud I am of these kids. Yes, it takes care of. It takes care of. It wipes away the ceremony or the pomp and circumstance. But the idea of simply knowing that your kids have gone through this the last 4 years, doing what they can to get to this point, is the most important thing in my eyes. Is seeing that struggle, seeing that growth, and seeing them come out as awesome people at the other side of this journey is really awesome to see. There was one thing I want to come back to though, Mr. Warwick, and I don't want to, you kind of undersold it a little bit with the idea that you were looking forward to having this opportunity to catch up as a first year teacher and look forward to how you could have all of your lessons planned out so that you weren't doing it the night before. Mm-hmm. I think something that students do kind of know, but they really don't understand, is I've been doing this now for about 3 years. I'm starting to get to the point, especially with world history, because I've taught it so much, that when I show up every day, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. I haven't had to put hours of endless work into lessons and formulating assignments and figuring out how to do it. I'm getting to the point where I can just enact it without much preparation. But something I think you undersold yourself with was you are looking forward to that opportunity because you've been putting in that time. That time that your students don't necessarily always see. They might feel it in your lessons with how you're going about it and how you're conducting them. But I think something for students to really take home is, as a first year teacher, you're teaching, you're going home, you're maybe going home for maybe a half hour, then you're going to night class, then you're coming back, you're eating dinner, and hopefully between 9 and 12, at least for me, I spent those 3 hours creating the next day's lesson plan. Yep. And I did that on repeat for about 8 months.
And it sucks. It sucks. I remember those days.
Mr. Warwick, I am so sorry to say. So I just finished my first year last year. This is just about the end of my second year. That you don't stop lesson planning your second year. Oh my God, no you don't. About a week before the school closure, I was talking with Mr. Hutton, and a student overheard that I spent 2 hours lesson planning and prepping an experiment we were going to do the next day. And the kid's eyes goes wide. You spent 2 hours for one lesson? Like, yes. Yes, kid. And he's like, how often do you have to listen? Like, I have to plan for every day, kid.
Like, every class.
Man.
Well,
it puts it into perspective too. Like, so you're only teaching these things for like an hour a piece, right? For an hour at a time. For that's how long the class period is. Sometimes, I mean, there's been times where I put in 7 to 8 hours for a single 1 hour lesson.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was when I was doing both Mr. Nunn's when I was doing all of Mr. Nunn's classes for that 1 month for February. It was like a lot of nights I'd be doing like, for both classes together, I'd be doing like 10 hours with literally almost no breaks. You know, I'd get up to get something to eat or, you know, to get something to drink, or I'd probably, you know, if I was listening to music, I'd change my song, but that's it. I mean, I wasn't taking breaks.
And that, my friend, is your future. That's what it's going to be. And I will say, I have completed 13 years of teaching. I'm in my 14th year now. And lesson planning does not go away. It does not get any easier. To assume that your third year in, you've got things on lockdown and you're ready to roll for every year here on out, says one of two things. It says either you don't understand the kind of work that you're going to have to put in to continually evolve and become a better teacher, or it means that you are not interested in evolving and becoming a better teacher and incorporating new ideas and continuing to
grow,
improve your craft and become a better teacher. You're just done, and you're going to keep recycling the same thing over and over and over again, which might be fantastic stuff that you're recycling, but it could also be mediocre stuff that could be improved upon. So,
can I interject with your own words? You said it does get easier. So, in the time of New Teacher Woes, saying that by year 3 you feel confident that you can move forward, maybe it's not that Chitwood isn't driving forward in his personal growth, but that he's feeling that it's gotten easier at year 3.
I mean, the traditional
throw you a bone.
weights, the traditional weights on a new teacher, they gradually start to get lifted. You know, you don't have as many new experiences, not as many new things to prepare for. Hopefully. For me, I've been pretty fortunate where I've had the ability to teach the same classes year to year. That is not always the case. Mr. Nunn, do you want to highlight how that going from a new teacher to where you're at now, it's not consistent always.
I've taught every social studies class in my 14 years. I've taught them all. But I also appreciate that chance because it's given me a chance to continue to try new things. I haven't gotten set in my ways. Now, the one class that I have had all 14 years is my GovEcon class, and I love it, and I hope to never give it up. But I will tell you that in year nine, I completely blew up everything that I did and started all over. Completely redid everything like I was a new teacher again. Just tossed out everything and started all over. And then year 12 came up, and I'm like, this new stuff that I got's pretty good. Let's try something new. So I've gone to more flipped learning. I've done more videos online. That's when I created my YouTube channel and started making videos for my students. It really, teaching is an evolution. So your first couple years, you're just going to be trying to survive. That's just the way it is. It's like you're a tiny little baby cub. That's what you are. And then as you start to get a little bit older into it, as you get more mature and you can start handling more things, and Chitwood said this perfectly when you said, you have different experiences and those experiences help you grow. You start having fewer new experiences. A lot of the experiences are experiences that you've had before, except now you're having them with new people and you know how to handle them. So you're not learning how to handle experiences. You're honing that craft. At the same time, you have your lessons done and you're ready to roll and you've got a skeleton of what you want to do. But most good teachers are going to want to take those skeletons and put different meat on them every year to improve them, make them better. So
depending on
that's kind of what's going on. You new guys should just be trying to survive.
Working on it.
I think you're doing an okay job.
Why, thank you.
You can also grow, though, too. I mean, if you feel like you are surviving better than most,
I mean, it depends on
challenge
perspective.
you also want to challenge yourself, too, and find ways to keep that curiosity about teaching and really refine that curiosity of teaching, because that's where your students are going to connect with you and the lessons, is where you're potentially doing a little bit more than surviving when you can, trying to challenge yourself and challenge the students to think beyond this singular lesson.
Can I have an interesting selfish gripe? It's not
Sure,
interesting at all.
absolutely.
Selfish gripe is that at the end of this year I would have gone from a preliminary credential to a clear credential, and it would have put me up for tenure at the beginning of next year, right? I would have been in that big meeting on the Monday, and pop, right?
People go to that?
Yeah. With the school closures, that's like the furthest thing from anyone's mind is people in my specific small situation. Warwick, I know you two, you get thrown to the side a little bit, but...
So technically, for clarification, Wazrick, I think what you're saying in more simple terms is you still have to meet that time requirement to get that clear credential?
I'm saying I haven't even heard from anyone about anything regarding what I have to do to make sure it still happens, if it can still happen, because I would love to get tenure. I'd love to upgrade my credential, my 2 credentials, by the way. Love to do that.
Ooh, that's a flex right there. That was rather unimpressive.
No.
Someone has not been working out in their home gym.
Got a home gym, Wazrick?
No, I've been working out the brain, man. Look at the hair. That's what happens. I just thought too hard.
Just falls right up.
That must be why my beard's so long.
Well, I think that's actually a good thing that I learned as a first, second year teacher. Is I wouldn't say that it's necessarily nobody's thinking about it, but sometimes you got to start your own conversations, especially in a time like this.
Yeah,
you have to be proactive and hold yourself and others accountable as well. Something that I learned being a first, second year teacher is, especially after student teaching, is nobody is doing this for you anymore. You're starting to grow as a professional, and you're starting to realize that you want to get something done, just do it. Figure it out. Find the people to contact, find the right people to contact, and ask those questions, ask the right questions.
You mean like an adult?
Like an adult, yeah. You kind of have to
crazy.
grow a little bit. Sarah Rocky, back to Sarah Rocky again. She used to always say that I was 12 when I first got hired on. And
You kind of look like you're 12.
I still am kind of 12. But as I started to assume a little bit more responsibility, started to show that I can handle a bit more over the past couple of years, I am now 12 and a half. And
Woo!
so I think
Wow.
that's an upgrade. I know. So I think really part of becoming a professional and going through these first couple of years of getting that tenure is going out, taking care of business and figuring out where you fall in that. And same with you, Matt, is in these specifically in these trying times, figuring out what you need to do to make sure you get your job done. People aren't going to reach out to you unless they know that they need to.
Yeah.
And you're going to find that more often than not, they're going to be really, really helpful trying to help you in whatever way that you need to be helped or assisted, because they know that people are going through this process and not everybody knows how to navigate these things. So being proactive, stepping out of that comfort zone and really taking directive, I think is an important thing as a first, second year teacher. And just in general, I mean, I wish there was many other veteran teachers that could take more initiative and more directive.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice, man. I'll send an email today. Why not?
Well, and my guess is one of two things are going to happen. They're either going to say you've fulfilled your requirement and you're going to be tenured, or they'll extend it to the next semester of next year and maybe have a midterm or a mid-year celebration ceremony to make it official. That would be my guess. My guess is option one's most likely. They're just going to say you fulfilled your requirement.
And let's not forget, I mean, we are still teaching kids as much as this is an interesting process to navigate. You're still reaching out to your kids. You're still developing lesson plans. You're figuring out what we're going to do when we're coming back. We're trying to figure out how to do this distance learning. It's all part of the process. And it might not be in the classroom specifically, and same with you, Matt. You're like, this could not have been any more of a better opportunity for you, Matt, to realize what are we doing when everything goes wrong?
Yeah.
And how do we move forward with it so that it's business as usual with kids, where we're still teaching them content, the skills, how to be awesome young people as they can be, and also learning yourself how to navigate through potentially having backup plans and having alternate plans and how you can be adaptable to the situation.
Yeah, really, this is worst case scenario. I mean, no one on this campus has ever experienced something like this. Everyone is flying by the seat of our pants right now. So, Warwick, I mean, you're lucky that you're getting to go through this as a student, rather as an employed person.
Because what Mr. Nunn's was having me do is post. He's writing prompts to Edmodo every day, like what he was doing, and for the U.S. history classes. And that's the one thing about being a new teacher is you discover it's easy to just give direct instruction, but coming up with those critical prompts and how to ask certain questions to lead students into critical thinking and to reach the conclusion themselves. That's the challenge, and that's what I'm trying to increasingly do that with this opportunity the best I can.
Well, and what's happening right now is we're just creating micro lessons. That's all we're really doing, trying to keep kids on track, thinking about something. So they're really micro lessons, something that should take them 5 to 10 minutes. But Warwick, you have kind of this golden opportunity right now to continue lesson planning, to continue preparing a class, so that when you do have a job, you've got this stuff done. And that will make your first year a lot easier, a lot smoother. Having a U.S. history or a world history class mapped completely out. So I would recommend to you to continue to use the hours between 8 and 3 to lesson plan, to create lessons, and send them to the three of us. Let us look them over. Have some peer editing go on. We'd be happy to give you comments on what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll start trying to make that my schedule and get it to you guys.
Yep.
And also, now's probably a really good time. I mean, I can't even think about the amount of time that you're going to have right now to prepare yourself for potential interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Two, one of the struggles of being a student teacher was one, trying to find a job as a social science teacher, because we all know that they're there. Sorry, the three of us, Mr. Nunn, Mr. Warwick, and myself know that finding a social science gig is not easy. Mr. Wasrick can get any job he wants. It doesn't really matter.
I went on 13 interviews before getting Tracy High, which means Tracy High was my 14th interview, and this is the only offer I got. I'm a bit of a loser.
So I think for you, I mean, you don't have to take off time out of the classroom to go to those interviews. Quite honestly, it's just going to be a Zoom interview wherever you get, probably.
Yeah.
Because of the social distancing stuff. But you have an opportunity to really think about how you're going to start getting a job for next year as well, and thinking about what it is that you've done with the lessons, what it is that you're continuing to do in terms of planning, and how that can translate into, okay, now this is what I do in my classroom, this is my pedagogy, how do I go about getting a job for next year?
Yeah.
So you have a fantastic opportunity to really focus on that as well. Whereas all three of us, more or less, probably had to student teach and go find a job at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the other thing that's having to change is the TPA.
I've got a plan for that.
Oh yeah, and me, Mr. Nunn, and my university supervisor have talked about that, and my professors as well. But what's happening is, because normally you're supposed to be in the classroom, you got lesson plans. And for cycle 2, I passed cycle 1 last semester. Cycle 2 is you have 3 to 5 lessons instead of just 1, and you have to tape them and then have some segments of each video segments. But obviously that's not going to be able to happen, and so we're planning on.
You got Zoom interviews. I mean, you got Zoom conferences.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking of, something along those lines. And so what I'm having to do is I wasn't going to do the TPA stuff for in the first week that we came back, hypothetically. But now what I'm doing is the stuff I was planning, I'm kind of putting that on hold and today starting to focus on the content and the skills and everything for the TPA lessons.
So Warwick, here's my suggestion on what I think we should do. We keep getting pushed further and further back on when school is going to come back into session. I would, if I were you, just pick a day for next week, and we'll do a Zoom that day. We'll record it. We'll get it done, and that will be your TPA if we don't go back to school. Now, if we go back to school, we'll still have that one recorded lesson. Whoop-de-doo, who cares? And we can do a real TPA in the classroom. But if we don't go back to school, at least we've got this recorded lesson. So I would suggest just getting it done next week.
Yeah, so just pick one day next week. I mean, it's just because it has to be technically at least 3 lessons. So I'm not sure how. Would we just do 1 per week, or?
Sure, we could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably want to do it late next week just so I have as much time as possible to really plan for that initial part. But I can in the next couple of 3 days, I can start posting about it on Edmodo probably.
Yeah.
So I think for the interest of the podcast, I want to move us in a different direction.
Sure, let's do it.
Kind of similar direction, but maybe to wrap up this conversation in terms of the life of a new teacher and what we might want our students to know. What does that feel like? I want to ask the question to all 3 of you, and I'll give my 2 cents as well. But what is something that you wish that your students would have known about what you are going through as a new teacher that may have made them be able to connect with the process of teaching for the first time a little bit easier?
Well, I think that's a fantastic question, and I'm going to go ahead and start since I'm the oldest. So I wish that students understood that the things that we are doing, we are sacrificing a lot to be the best that we can. And as a new teacher, we are just learning. We are just getting the hang of what we're doing. We don't know everything. We're going to screw up, quite possibly a lot. But that does not mean that we are not trying our best. It does not mean we don't care about you. It means that we're learning. We're not going to be perfect. We are people. And just like students sometimes fail tests, we are going to fail tests sometimes as well. And I don't ridicule my students or hold it against them when they don't get a passing grade. I wish they would not hold it against me when I do not get a passing grade either. If they could give me some kind of constructive feedback, that would be great. That really would be helpful. But just not liking me because I made a mistake in class really is not very fair to me and is not going to make me a better teacher.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, everything that you said with a lot of that echo that's going on in your microphone is really, I think, really similar to what I felt. It's, you know, when you're under the microscope of having 35 kids in a room, they like to call you out on the things that you mess up on, because naturally, us as teachers, we sometimes call them out, right?
Absolutely.
So naturally, it's kind of a give and take situation here, but also we're human, right? And we're learning just as much as we might be a first-year teacher, we might be a student teacher, we might be a veteran teacher that's been doing it for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
We make mistakes.
Yep.
And I think the biggest thing is, for us as teachers, is owning up to those mistakes and not trying to make it seem like we're perfect. Because if we are trying to just act like we're perfect all the time, you have to hold yourself to those same standards and expect that people are going to call you out. But I think kids really resonate when you're real with them and you show them that it's okay to mess up. Yeah. And we want you to mess up. I mean, again, I always go back to that hashtag, fail until you don't.
Fail until you don't.
So I think that that's something that I really resonate with too. Waz, what do you think?
I guess as far as humanizing teachers, especially, you know, first year teacher plight, and making mistakes, I want students to know, I want to connect with students on the sense that I care. And I know the three of you are all great teachers, and one of the things I think makes you great teachers more than your content and your knowledge base, but how much you care. And so I care so much about my students, and it really has been weighing on my mind, and I've been racking my brain in ways to reach out to students, provide some sort of resources. I feel like a lot of times my students think I'm just obsessed with science and physics and biology, and I am a nerd and I am obsessed with it. But
you are a nerd.
Thank you.
We do say nerd every time you walk in the door.
Nerd. Well, you guys do care, right?
We care a lot. We just don't care much about you.
But yeah, no. In terms of reaching out to my students and what I want to do as a teacher in these times is less about getting kids this science knowledge. Like, you don't necessarily need to know how to draw circuit diagrams right now. But I do want students to keep thinking and staying critical about the world around them, and not just looking at the news, taking it for face value, being able to do some research on their own, cite their sources, critical thinking, create their own opinions.
Yep.
Finding the counter argument, finding the opinions that go against theirs. And so in connecting that to what it's like being a new teacher is a lot of times you're just in that survival mode, like Mr. Nunn said. And I think using this time for me as a relatively still new teacher to grow my pedagogy, grow my teaching, grow my education in a new way. Less thinking of this as a negative time, thinking more like, hey, maybe now I'll get better at online education. Maybe now I'll get better at developing labs and experiments that kids can do at home or something like that. So stay positive, I guess, bottom line.
Yep.
Bottom line.
That's good.
And Warwick, what from the student-teacher perspective, what do you think you would like your students to know about your process through all this and how that might help them understand what it is that you do in the classroom and why.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I would say, especially with me, who's someone who's very self-conscious, it can get awkward, during those, question and answer sessions and discussions at times. But a lot of the reason why we do that's why teachers do that stuff, whether you're a student teacher or you've been doing this for 30 plus years, is to be able to connect with the students and have that reciprocal discussion, because that's what makes class really come alive. It's not us talking to you and getting nothing and just having you listen. It's having those meaningful discussions, and that's where real learning tends to happen most of all. And so, I mean, I would say that to students, like, no matter who the teacher is, even if it feels a little awkward because they're new, try to participate with them. And I had a few students, especially, who stood out, who would chime in. When there was that awkward silence, someone would chime in and it would help. And so I would say that's why we do those types of lessons is to have that connection and to make learning about everybody and not just us talking to you all the time.
Yep.
It does go back to we do care. That's what it goes back to.
All right. Chitwood, do you want to have the last word, and then we'll call it an evening?
Yeah, I think it's for me, just going back to that mindset of being a first-year teacher, student teacher. I just think about the endless amount of hours that I did put in to try to make my lessons perfect. And as a first-year teacher, I slowly realized that everything didn't have to be perfect. But like you said, Warwick, sometimes we tend to be overcritical of ourselves. We're trying to make things as perfect as possible. And part of that process is reflecting on student feedback and students actually being genuine with you. And honestly, I appreciate it every time a student said, "Chitwood, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense," or "What's the purpose behind it?" I appreciated when kids would involve themselves in the lesson, but I appreciated more when the kids challenged me and said, "Hey, why are we doing this?" Because that actually made me think from the student's perspective, yeah, what the heck are they doing this for? Like, we know that we're teaching to standards and to curriculum that we know is there. The kids don't know that it's there. So it gets us to think about when we have kids that are keeping us on our toes or that are challenging us to be the best teachers we can be. Because to be honest, a lot of these kids, they're 16 years old, they're teenagers, but at the same time, they want an education too, and they want a good one. And they're most of the times just looking out for themselves and wondering how this is going to value them. And that's something that really was highlighted to me early on as a first-year teacher was, I need to make this meaningful for the kids because they're telling me it's not. So I think student feedback and really listening to kids and urging them to reach out to their teachers and have those real discussions is what I would have really wanted more students to do. So,
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and end it right there and have a lovely afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nunn, for the podcast.
Yeah, dudes.
Something stirring in the air of victory. Time bomb ticking to explode. 3, 2, 1 and go. Something passive, something not. Billy clubs, I'll call the SWAT. Rabid dogs without a leash. Is this how you keep the peace? You want riots, wear your riot gear. You want violence, then shoot some tear gas in the air. Is written on your badge to serve and protect. It seemed you only served yourself, protecting your neck. Controlling with fear, menacing and threatening. You want my respect, you better start respecting me. Go and get your riot gear, swing your girly all around. We'll be dancing on the cinders as the town is burning down. Swing her around, burn it all down. Something smelled of power tripping, crowd control was rank. Tear gas everyone downtown, what you did really stank. Legislation never made you judge and jury. Martial law now, beat the kids down with no worry. Go and get your riot gear, swing your girly all around. We'll be dancing on the cinders as the town is burning down. Swing her around, burn it all down.